It's the My Michelle Live podcast.
My Michelle Live.
Hey, thank you for joining us. I'm Michelle Mendoza, and you have got My Michelle Live. Every broadcast has a little bit of a different bent, and today we take on entertainment. So, it's the My Michelle Live podcast. Yeah, we already heard that. Thank you very much. It is entertainment review where we look at movies. We look at differing shows and television programs and books and things that you can connect with for your family, but we look at it from a little deeper point of view. We look to see if there's ways that we can enhance our family, ways that we can dig into the spiritual, and things that we also might want to avoid, trends that may be happening that you should be aware of, because it's all about being the best you that you can be. It's all about living that best life. Sometimes when we just sit drooling in front of the television, you know how you are what you eat? Sometimes you are what you put into your spirit. So we are going to take it on with the one and only Plugged In Paul.
I'm Paul Lacey. Here we are.
That's right. I'm kind of curious, Paul, as I welcome you, why as we entered the program when we play our great My Michelle Live theme music, why you weren't grabbing Rock Band behind you, I can see, and just...
Oh, yeah. I really should have. I totally missed my opportunity. I really, I've never actually played Rock Band.
No?
Which makes me, it's supposed to be this great game, and I am a music lover. You would think I would have done it, but no.
Oh, no. I recommend just plugging in, all right? Because I love it. If you are new to the program or you haven't watched and seen us connect with Paul before, for some reason, as awesome as Paul is, they shove him in the archives of stuff. You could see for those of you who are Generation Z, you'll have no idea what's there over his left shoulder. That is what people used to play music on. They were called boom boxes. I think you have a Teddy Ruskin or no, what is that? That's Paddington up there.
So we've got a Star Wars poster back there. You can't see it, but we've got Wonder Woman back there. Black Panther is hanging out. Yeah, this is a pretty eclectic room. I have right over to my left side, there's about 15 million Christian movie DVD cases. So if I feel like taking home a Christian movie, I've got access to one.
And so, if you are in the archives, and this is kind of interesting as you're watching, we like to look for the God story. And there is a movie that I'm going to share this week that encapsulates the God story, but does it in such a powerful story. It's a real story based on a real human. It's a sports story, which I love my sports stories. And it's so inspirational. It is a true story and told in such a way because of this young man's faith, who is the center of this show, of this story. The God element is genuine and real. And as you look over your shoulder there, Paul, there has been a lot of people who have put out the effort to share a faith element through film, because that's our medium of our day. That's how we tell our stories in this time in history. And unfortunately, some come off as preachy, cheesy, and silly. It's just been the way of Christian films, especially in the past on low budget.
Absolutely. It's the Christian movie industry is fascinating because you have some really well-meaning and a lot of really talented filmmakers who have some great stories to tell. but telling them can be a challenge, and budget has a lot to do with that. Experience has a lot to do with that. Even the Christian marketplace, honestly, I think has a lot to do with it as well, because I think that the movies that can be successful and most successful in the Christian marketplace, they tend to be a little like 2-hour cinematic sermons, which are great for the people who watch. But
those 5 people love it.
It can be really great, and I don't want to minimize that movies can make a huge impact. But for me, as a movie lover who loves the stories that we see on screen and loves to watch them be told creatively, it's encouraging when I see a great Christian brought to the screen, and there have been a few of those.
There have been a few, and as of the last maybe 5 years, Christian films have been much, much better.
Absolutely.
The true stories, they always get me. So I'm going to share with you in just a bit an extraordinary film that left me impacted on such a deep level, entertained, inspired. I want to be a better person because of this film, and I'm going to kind of tease you on that. But there's a film that may not make me a better person, but lots of people have been looking forward to it. It is Jungle Cruise, and Jungle Cruise, Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt, Jack Whitehall, all in this Disney film based on nothing else but a ride at Disneyland.
That is absolutely right. So, Michelle, have you done the Jungle Cruise ride?
Oh, yeah. And it's one of my favorites. One of my favorites.
That was when I was 9 years old. Went to Disneyland for the very, very first time. That was the ride I went on first. I stood in line for 45 minutes. It was an eternity for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
It was worth the wait. I love the animals. I love the cheesy jokes from the boat captains. I thought it was just all magical. It was great. Still to this day, when I go to Disneyland or Disney World, I'm always in line for Jungle Cruise. The movie, not quite as good. I do have to say it was a little bit of a letdown for me because I was really looking forward to the Jungle Cruise, the movie.
Do you think you built it up? I mean, I know that on pluggedin.com, the tagline is, you could argue that Jungle Cruise, the ride is timeless. The movie, not so much. So that may be the consensus, but is that indeed indicative of somebody who is just like, Jungle Cruise?
Yeah, why is it not just like the ride, except 2 hours long? No, and there could be an element of that, but I do believe when I watched it, there were a few things that sort of stood out to me. Number one, it felt scarier than I expected it to be. When you think of Jungle Cruise, you think that this is going to be an all ages type of experience. And it has some Pirates of the Caribbean, like dead conquistadors to sort of deal with. And they are freaky.
I see. I love that. Bring it on. I think that's great. But it should come with a caveat, because if you do have young kids, you can go on the ride. Rides in general, especially if you're looking outside of Disneyland, and even Disney, if you look at the Raiders of the Lost Ark ride, it is scarier. They are bringing things up a notch. The fear factor. That if you don't want that ride, it's a small world after all. If you don't want that, go to Epcot Center, which my last visit felt a little lame. Excuse me, but you can go to Epcot and ride Frozen. There's no element of peril that you really have to worry about there. It's all sweet and wonderful. But in order to compete, I think, Paul, with other theme parks, Disney has to bring it up a little.
It's an interesting, it's an interesting thing because I think that you're right. Like Indiana Jones ride is one of my very favorite rides at Disneyland. I love the Indiana Jones ride. My poor kids, because one of them was not old enough or tall enough to go on the ride,
you abandoned them.
Well, we forced our other child because my wife and I, we sort of took turns going on Indiana Jones and forced our oldest child to go with us every single time, while I took my daughter or my wife took my daughter to the Tiki Room or to the Storybook ride. My son, he went on that ride 12 times in one trip to Disneyland because we loved it so much. So I totally get it. But at the same time, I mean, when you're talking about the Jungle Cruise, I think that there are going to be parents who think this is, and I don't think it is. You see people, there's a lot of people who die. There are people who bounce off of like rocks as they're falling to their doom. So it does have some PG-13 elements, and it is rated PG-13. The other thing to be aware of is that it's a very issues-oriented movie.
Okay, and that's what I want to get into. If you watch, if you go to pluggedin.com, you get some of the issues, the spiritual elements. You can look at long reviews of films, books, movies, YouTube channels, and the like. And we like to talk about them here because I think it helps to understand not only the issues, but are they navigable? And if they are, how do you do that? Young parents, sometimes they're going, should I expose my kids to this? These are questions you have to ask on your own. We're not here to tell you what to do, but we can give you some tools to empower you as parents. So let's take on some of those issues in Jungle Cruise. And as we do, let's set the stage of what it's about. It's a film, as I understand it, and you've seen it, I have not, but it is looking for treasures in the new world, the Fountain of Youth, El Dorado, Tears of the Moon, that gives kind of a cure to any disease. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are looking for the Tears of the Moon. That is the big quest that they are on. It's 1916, which is right in the middle of World War I. People are dying from war. People are dying from disease. And the sister and brother team, McGregor and Lily, have always been told this story of the Tears of the Moon, which are essentially petals from this magical tree deep, deep, deep in the Amazon. They have been told it's a bedtime story, but for whatever reason, they believe that there's some truth behind it, and they want to find this magical tree in the Amazon. And they think that they have the tools now, especially this sort of magic arrowhead, that will help them lead them to this tree. And so all they need is a riverboat captain, an Amazonian riverboat captain, to take them on this quest. They need him to be strong. They need him to be brave. They need him to be honest. And Frank Wolf, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is obviously strong. He is brave. The honesty, not so much. So they head off into the wilds of the Amazonian jungle, and I have experienced whole bunches of threats. They deal with Germans in submarines. They deal with dead conquistadors running around, all in pursuit of the Tears of the Moon. And that's sort of what the story is really built on.
So some of the elements in this, we talked about peril, but as you were saying, there's also, some issues. We get, I guess every movie has to, in this day and age, have a little preachiness to it. It's not just those Christian films that we talked about. There's preaching going on.
Well, that is really true. And you do have elements of that. McGregor is gay. He alludes to it in a way that might fly over younger viewers' heads, but in a way that might trigger a lot of questions in those same younger viewers. So I think that the parents need to be prepared to address that issue.
Now, from what I understand, it comes out in one scene where Frank where McGregor tells Frank
Mm-hmm.
that he had to break the truth of to other people he
Yes.
would have been engaged to, that his interests lie elsewhere, and he would have been disinherited and ostracized from society because of who he loved had it not been for his sister. He doesn't go into detail as to what that means, so you can let it mean whatever you want, but Disney was pretty clear in saying this is a LGBTQ issue. Do you think that, having seen it, and I have not, do you find that they did it tastefully?
I think they did it tastefully. They did it. It's really not a very big part of the story at all. It is something that they could have easily lost and not lost any part of what Jungle Cruise is about. At the same time, you can go to it and not feel like you're being hammered over the head every 5-10 minutes. It is just in that one scene. The characters otherwise don't even make reference to it ever again. So
we're not seeing a. Let me ask this real quick, Paul. So we're not seeing a stereotypical character. We're not seeing a stereotypical gay man character in this film.
Well, yes and no. He is British, and because of that, he is an upper crust British gentleman. And so one of the funnier scenes in the very beginning is he takes along all this luggage on this jungle cruise. He brings along his tennis rackets, his golf clubs, his dinner jackets. And so there are some elements of, he is very genteel. And so you can either interpret that gentility as him being a British gentleman. You could interpret it as him being, a little effeminate.
Okay. I think this is an important issue, and I want to help parents because to a degree, we can feel, whether you think that the LGBT issue is an issue, you may not care. You may care very much. And in that, there are some places where you really have to have this discussion or maybe have this discussion in your head. Paul, it's part of our society. People who have same-sex attraction go to our churches, whether they act on those attractions or not. That's part of who we are. It's part of, and you could argue from a biblical standpoint, it's part of our fallen nature. We have same-sex attractions at times, or we have unhealthy attractions. We have things that we're drawn to that we know we probably shouldn't. It's not God's best. And that may be offensive to some, but that's a biblical teaching that parents are trying to deal with in this day and age. So I am going to go out on a limb here and say that the very few times that I have seen Disney, for example, address issues, we saw this in Beauty and the Beast, where LaFleur, I think is the character's name, has a kind of a little,
something like that.
yeah. Has kind of a connection with someone was where one of the main characters gets dressed up by the wardrobe in a dress and was like, oh, I like this, so there's a bit of that. You can laugh at it, but you can also skim over it. I'm wondering, from a man who has a gift for helping people to find a spiritual message in things, how do you take it?
It's a really provocative question that could get me fired. Who knows? This may be the last time we ever talk. No, it is. I think the issue itself is one of the most difficult and perplexing and important issues that the church must face. How to deal with this well. Because we know what the Bible says. We also know that there are a lot of other factors involved that we need to take into account, and that God loves people. He loves all of us, even though we were all fallen, right? And I think that sometimes within our Christian world, we can lose sight. We can turn in this issue into a super sin. in a sense, where it becomes a huge, important, and it is a very important issue. But at the same time, I think that sometimes we forget that we too have fallen. We too have fallen short of God's grace. And this becomes a really important thing that we have to grapple with. Now, in the context of movies, and as these are moving more and more into the entertainment sphere, where we're taking our kids to see them, you're right, it is in the world. And I think that one of the things that parents are bothered by when they see these elements in movies is not so much necessarily the context, not even the content itself, because in Jungle Cruise, it's you don't see anything. You hear this reference, and that's it.
And you almost have to assume that's what it means from what I've seen. You have to make that assumption.
You need to connect the dots, but I do think Disney meant for you to connect the dots. But the thing is that it's not even so much the issue, but the fact that all of a sudden they're there with their kids and they feel like they need to address it earlier than what they intended. And I think that is a difficult issue for many parents. My advice would be to those parents, it is part of the culture and it's not going away. And it's one of those things that you have to be prepared to talk about. Whatever your perspective is, from a political point of view, from a Christian point of view, from a parenting point of view, from a relational point of view, you need to be ready to talk with your children about these really important issues,
and
because the culture is not going to allow you to ignore them. So you need to be prepared.
Nor should we, because I'm not going to get fired because I'm my own boss. I may get chided by myself later, but I'm not going to get fired. Thank God I have job security in this. But I'm going to say, yeah, deal with this, people. This gives you the opportunity to have a connection in a way that is not in your face, and realize that people are people. Teach your children to love people. I find there's a lot of things that you can discuss academically, politically, the issue of gay marriage. If you're not going to recognize God or faith, why would you care about marriage? Marriage is an institution of the church. The church should be able to say, this is what marriage is. Boom. If you don't recognize God, if you don't recognize the church, then you don't need to recognize marriage. Call it whatever you want. We're in a free society. As adults, you should be able to make the choices that you want to make, even if it's not God's first choice for you. Does God still love you? Yes, God loves you. We all make crazy and sometimes choices that are driven by what I call the need to anesthetize, Paul. We're dealing with a fallen world. We're hurting. All of us have pain and hurt that we have to deal with. And we find ways to anesthetize. Some of us overeat. You know, the Bible talks about buffeting your body. If you go to churches, there's a lot of people buffeting their bodies. You know, that's a sin in God's economy as well. God's not, he says, a respecter of persons. So that means that whatever you're doing that's outside of his best, it's hindering you from your best relationship with God. Whether it is your sexual leanings, whether it is what you consume, whether it is what you watch, how the choices that you make, the way you treat your family, whatever it may be, that's what we need to be looking at. What are we doing in our lives that are keeping us from God's best? And how can we be loving other people in their struggle as well? Maybe that's part of the conversation you can have with your child. You do not have to agree with me, but I want to encourage you in this, because some of us need maybe a little guidance in this world that we're in today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me get off my soapbox. All right. I'm okay now.
Well, and I do think that so many, and let me be honest, Plugged In is in the work of helping parents protect their kids from things that they shouldn't be seen at their age. We give parents a lot of information to help them choose movies, entertainments, books, everything, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think sometimes we can fall into a trap where we silo ourselves from the real fallen world that we are around. And when I think back to the New Testament, to the world that Paul was walking in, that the world that the disciples were walking in, that was a tremendously fallen world. You saw on the street corners all manner of pagan worship, of all the weird things that entailed. You saw,
and the worst that it entails, the absolute worst that it entails, without restraint.
When you look at the Bible, the Christians that we read about were not shielded from the world. They walked out in it as innocent as doves, as wise as serpents, to deal with that fallen world of theirs. And sometimes I believe that we lose sight of that in trying to protect ourselves from the messiness of the world. The world is just a messy place, and we are called to help heal those injuries, those hurts that we find. And I think we could be doing a better job of that sometimes. Right.
Well, I thought that since we came into this talking about Jungle Cruise, we might go ahead and watch the trailer.
Frank, follow me.
Stop her!
Oh, God, sorry, Frank.
Sorry, strong form.
My name is Dr. Lily Houghton. My brother and I are looking for passage upriver.
What's out there in the jungle? It's not a fun vacation.
Well, I'm not here for a vacation. Legend has it that there is a tree that possesses unparalleled healing power. It will change medicine forever.
And you need someone to help you find it. Here we go.
Sometimes it just needs a bit of a...
Nobody touches my engine but me. What did I just...
There you go.
We're gonna do this together.
Haven't you been dreaming about adventure?
She was always chasing after some far-fetched idea. There's no such thing as curses.
Everything that you see wants to kill you, and can. Do you want to turn back?
Nope, just getting started.
Well, I have to say, it looks like a fun adventure to me. I mean, this is right up my alley, we'll just say. So I'm kind of looking forward to watching this film with all the caveats that we talked about. Now, I wanted to move on to another film that I did watch this week. And Paul, it is a sequel, Troll Hunter. Troll Hunter's Rise of the Titans. It is I'm sorry, I didn't see the first Troll Hunter, and that's why I want to say, if you want to watch Troll Hunter 2, you probably should watch Troll Hunter 1, because you walk in going, wait, what?
It's a crazy movie. Actually based on a series, actually 3 television series, the original Troll Hunter television series. So, but you're absolutely right. You're dealing with a massive history here. And I watched Troll Hunters Rise of the Titans as well. I stepped in and I felt like I had started like 2/3 of the way through a Russian novel. You know, it was, who are these people?
It wasn't just me.
What are they doing? No,
and why do I care?
And why do I care? You do care because, of course, you have these terrible witches, these people who are trying to destroy the world and recreate it with these titans, these monstrous titans. So, of course, you don't want the world to be destroyed. If you look at it at that level, then you're fine. If that's all you care about, that's fine. But there's a whole bunch of characters that are here that you have no clue why they're there or who they are. And it does get a little puzzling. It's definitely for Troll Hunter fans.
Okay, so having said that and wasting no more time on it, let's talk about the movie Jolt.
Jolt is a very interesting movie on Netflix. It is a fascinating, well, I won't say that. It is a really bloody, problematic mess of a movie. But it has a kind of an interesting twist to it, in that the main character, played by Kate Beckinsale, I believe, she has these very, very serious anger management issues, and they can only be controlled by this vest that shocks her. It shocks her, and then she doesn't feel like killing whoever she's talking to.
I could use that where chocolate's concerned, but go ahead.
Exactly. So she has this, it's getting her under control. It's all great until something terrible happens. And her boyfriend dies and is killed, and she needs to go after the killer. So she obviously loses the vest, and it becomes a big quest for revenge. So it's a fascinating little journey in a very, very, very bloody way.
Well, okay. Enough said there as well. Television shows new to the neighborhood is Turner and Hooch. You may remember the movie Turner and Hooch. That was Tom Hanks, I believe, was in that, if I remember right.
You got it.
This television series, I've seen the one and only episode. Plus. Very cute.
It is very cute, and it feels a lot like the original movie. You know, as a matter of fact, it's a direct sequel. Oddly enough, the son of the original Turner gets another dog, another huge dog. He also does not want the dog, but finds that the dog enriches his life, enriches his family's life, and becomes a great little police dog as well. Actually, I do have to say, one of the, as we talk about movies, as we talk about TV, something to be aware of, to come down the pipe, that your listeners may be interested in, your viewers. 9 Days. 9 Days is one of the most interesting movies I've seen this year. 9 Days. Yeah, it is kind of the direct opposite of Jungle Cruise. It is a film directed by David Lowery. It is essentially about this guy who lives on what looks like this desert landscape. It's all just sand and sky, but he is essentially a gatekeeper to the world of the living. He interviews souls who are about to come alive, essentially, and he interviews them to see if they get the opportunity to dive into this glorious experiment called life. It is very metaphysical, very existential, and beautiful. It's R-rated for a smattering of language. It earns its R, but besides that, there's no content to speak of. It is an amazing rumination on life and how difficult life can be, but how it is a gift. And some of the things that you see in this film, they're just stunning in their understated beauty. It's really amazing. So if you're interested in a pretty adult movie that features not a lot of explosions,
okay, and then adult in the good way, can we say?
Adult in a good way. This is a thoughtful movie. This is a movie that you think about for days afterwards. But it's I think, despite its R rating, it's really thought-provoking and perhaps worth seeing.
All right. 9 Days is the recommendation from our own plugged-in Paul AC. I'm going to give you mine. I'm going to play the trailer of a film that I saw this week that I mentioned that has greatly impacted me. What a story. Watch.
Ready? Go! Come on, Brad, we got me on. Hey, get in there. That's my brother. Take it down. What are you doing? Take it down. He is ferocious.
You want to walk on? Head your own way? We certainly won't stop you. There ain't no way you ever gonna play. Not here.
It just might make it. Make it. I just hope he lives. Why are you wasting your time working with that kid? Well, he wants it more than him.
If I can teach my son how to walk, I can teach you these steps.
You just got your butt kicked by a walk-on. That is no walk-on.
The Lord knows that you've worked harder than anybody else, on and off the field.
You are living proof that when you do the right things, good stuff happens. And you have done everything right.
I'm going to pause it there for just a moment. This film is out on Netflix. You are seeing the story of Brandon Brolsworth, who indeed walked on to surprisingly walked on to a team. They're the Razorbacks, and knocked it out of the park. I mean, he walked on being over 300 pounds, pure fat, and couldn't keep up, could barely breathe, but worked his way to lose something like 50 pounds, worked hard. First one there, last one to leave. He really, really worked harder than anyone, and was amazingly was granted a scholarship for his sophomore year. The kid started as a sophomore. He became an All-American. He was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, but something very tragic happened before 11 days after the draft, and I'm going to play the rest of this. It's hard, but wow, what a beautiful story.
Of all people, how's that make any sense?
His life meant something. It had to. I've never met a better man than your brother.
He believed that if he worked hard and did everything he was supposed to, God would make everything turn out for the best. Didn't everything turn out for the best, Marty?
Have faith, Marty. This is my road.
How bad do you want it? Real bad! How bad? Real bad! How bad? Real bad! Burlsworth got him!
Brandon Burlsworth has become the greatest walk-on story in the history of college football.
Yeah, the story is greater. It's amazing. Our loss is great, but God is greater. And his inspirational story, the hard work that he put in, the impossible odds of him rising to the top, but then his life being cut short, it is impactful. But it is a story of his faith and his endurance that will move absolutely everyone. I could not more highly recommend. Not only, Paul, do I love a good faith story, but I also really love a sports story, and I love a story that makes me want to be a better person. So if you will indulge me just one more moment, I'm going to play you just some real footage and a real story of the true Brandon Burlsworth. Here we go.
The Brandon Burlsworth story was unfolding like a fairy tale. But yesterday afternoon, Burlsworth died in an auto accident. Police say Burlsworth's Subaru crossed the center line and was hit by a semi.
Brandon done the hard way and made it to the highest level, and then you don't get to play.
Since 2010, the Burlsworth Trophy has been awarded to the nation's most outstanding college football player who started his career as a walk-on. You know.
What a story. So I recommend Greater. I have to say, watch the film. It will inspire your entire family. So watch the film, Paul. Watch the film, Greater.
Yeah. It sort of brings our conversation full circle, right? I think that we all know that not every Christian film is great, but sometimes they are. sometimes they're wonderful movies that move you deeply. And this, I haven't seen Greater, but this definitely looks like one that could very well fit the bill.
Very well, and it is, in my opinion, well acted, done well. No, it's not Academy Award winning, but if you are, do you remember? I'm trying to remember the name of the film, Paul. Another true story of a young football player who had to bring his brother with him to college. Do you remember the name of that film? I may need to look that up.
It was just out last year. I know the movie that you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of it right now. It actually was nominated for one of the Plugged In Movie Awards. So, it was a really wonderfully told story about
safety.
Just a brother. Safety.
Yeah, it's the story of Ray McCathbey, freshman football player from Clemson, who had to raise his brother secretly on campus. So it's another inspirational story with that sports element.
Yeah. It really is. I don't know why sports is such a wellspring of fantastic stories about faith and courage and determination. Even as you were talking about Greater, it reminded me of a book that I actually had just written with another NFL player who has a story similar to that. His name is Jason Brown, and the book is called Centered. He actually began his career, or his football career. He tried out for the football team mainly to just have something to do. He was really trying to decide between football and band, of all things. And he decided to choose band, but he was pretty out of shape, and he joined the band and tried to do both for a while, but couldn't do it. And then his football coach said, "You know what? We would really love for you to just play football." And he said, "Give me a little time to get in shape." He got in shape. He became one of the best linemen in North Carolina. He went to the University of North Carolina, was drafted in the 4th round of the NFL, became the highest paid center in the league, and then gave it all up to become a farmer. He was a remarkable man. So I don't know why there are so many good people who wind up playing football. It's incredible.
Well, I'll answer that. We do a sports show if you watch Sports Time Out on Fridays. Sports is an analogy for life. We are all going through the struggle. We're all looking for the win, but we oftentimes face setbacks. We oftentimes find ourselves on the losing end of the W, and perseverance is what we need to get through. We need something more than just talent. Talent can only get you so far. You have to play with your team. You have to believe in yourself. And oftentimes it's those who believe in something greater, like the movie Greater, that gets you through. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is my calling. And being able to pull on something that is greater than yourself. In our case, we talk about the God story. That is what sees you through. So you asked the right question. We're out of time. And I want to thank you, Paul Asay, for joining us today. Plugged In Paul.
I'm Paul Asay.
Here we are. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to encourage you as you're watching or listening to go to MyMichelleLive. Look at some of our sponsors like Real Bearded Men. You can get the Real Bearded Men products and make that beard and mustache, ooh, so wonderful. Calitrin, which is the fountain of youth in the bottle. It is indeed. And other great sponsors of MyMichelleLive. Paul, great connecting with you. Beauty and the Browns is your latest book. I encourage folks to pick it up. It is very inspirational for those who are dealing with depression, and that happens to be a lot more people in recent years. It's a very timely book. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Always happy to do it.
More entertainment at